Millionaire sees a struggling single mother begging for food. What he discovers leaves him shocked. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from. It always makes my day to read your comments. Jonathan Morgan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, gazing out at the Seattle skyline as rain tapped against the glass. At 40, he had built an empire in technology that most could only dream of. The Morgan Technologies logo glowed from buildings across the city, a testament to his success, yet emptiness echoed through every corner of his life. "Mr. Morgan," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your son's school called. Tyler's waiting to be picked up." Jonathan checked his watch and sighed. 3 hours late. Again. "Tell Martin to bring the car around." His fingers traced the silver frame on his desk, a photo of Charlotte, her smile radiant despite the hospital bed where she lay. 3 years gone, yet the wound remained fresh. "I'm trying, Charlie," he whispered to the photograph. The elevator descended 52 floors, each level taking him further from the sanctuary where he buried himself in work. Work didn't hurt. Work didn't remind him of promises he struggled to keep. Rain pounded mercilessly as Jonathan slid into the back seat of his luxury sedan. "School first, then home," he instructed his driver. His phone buzzed with notifications. Investors, developers, the board demanding decisions only he could make. When they arrived at Westlake Academy, Tyler sat alone on a bench under the portico, hunched over a tablet. At 10 years old, his son already mirrored his own isolation. "Hey buddy, sorry I'm late." Tyler didn't look up. "It's fine. What are you working on?" "Coding project." 2 words. That's all Jonathan would get. The boy climbed into the car, maintaining the wall between them that grew higher with each missed soccer game and forgotten parent-teacher conference. Back at the mansion, they moved through their evening routine like players following stage directions. Dinner served by the housekeeper. Minimal conversation. Tyler retreating to his room. Later, Jonathan stood in the doorway of his son's bedroom. Tyler had fallen, asleep with his coding books spread around him, Charlotte's curious nature living on in their child. He carefully removed the tablet from Tyler's hand and pulled the blanket over his shoulders. "I promised her I'd be there for you," he whispered. "I'm sorry I'm failing." Jonathan walked to his study, poured himself a scotch, and stared at the family portrait from happier times. He had everything money could buy, yet lacked what mattered most, the warmth that once filled these walls. Tomorrow would be different, he told himself. Tomorrow he'd try harder to honor his promise to Charlotte, but tomorrow would bring unexpected guests to his door. Visitors who would challenge everything he thought he knew about family, forgiveness, and healing. The windshield wipers fought, a losing battle against the downpour as Jonathan drove home from another late night at the office. His mind drifted between acquisition proposals and Tyler's science project due tomorrow, one more parental duty he'd barely managed to help with. A flash of movement caught his eye. Outside a small grocery store stood a woman, soaked to the bone, with 4 small identical girls huddled against her legs like ducklings seeking shelter. The woman appeared to be pleading with the store owner, who stood in the doorway shaking his head. Jonathan didn't know why he pulled over. Perhaps it was the defeated slump of the woman's shoulders, or the way the little girls, none older than 5, held hands in a perfect chain, their matching blonde pigtails plastered to their heads. He stepped out into the rain. "Is everything all right?" The woman startled, instinctively pulling her daughters closer. She had once been beautiful, Jonathan could tell, before exhaustion had carved hollows beneath her cheekbones. "We're fine," she said, though they were clearly anything but. "I heard you asking for credit," Jonathan said gently. "Let me help." "We don't need charity." Pride flashed in her eyes despite her circumstances. One of the little girls tugged at her mother's soaked jacket. "Mommy, I'm hungry," she whispered. The woman's resolve crumbled. "I'm Sophia," she finally said. "These are my daughters, Lily, Rose, Daisy, and Violet." Inside the store, Jonathan filled a cart while the girls stared wide-eyed at the abundance. They moved as one unit, never straying from their mother, speaking only in whispers. when Violet, distinguished by a tiny butterfly clip clinging to her wet hair, reached for a package of cookies, she quickly withdrew her hand and looked fearfully at her mother. "It's okay," Jonathan said, adding the cookies to the cart. "Every kid deserves a treat." As they checked out, Jonathan noticed Sophia, tallying the items, her lips moving silently. Anxiety etched across her face. He wondered how long they'd gone without a proper meal. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" he asked as they loaded grocery bags into his car. Sophia hesitated. "We're between places. There's a diner around the corner. Let me buy you dinner while we figure something out." At the diner, the girls devoured their meals with careful manners that seemed eerily practiced for children so young. Sophia picked at her food, watching Jonathan with wary eyes. "Why are you helping us?" she finally asked. Jonathan thought of Tyler alone at home with the housekeeper. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "But I know what it's like to feel alone." As they talked, Sophia mentioned her ex-husband's name, Maxwell Pierce, and Jonathan nearly choked on his coffee. The same Maxwell Pierce who had stolen his patented technology and almost destroyed his company years ago. He studied the exhausted woman and her 4 drowsy daughters. The girls now leaned against each other, their identical faces peaceful in slumber for perhaps the first time that day. Fate had a strange sense of humor, delivering the family of his enemy to his doorstep. "I have a furnished apartment above my garage," he heard himself saying. "It's yours if you need it, just until you get on your feet." Sophia's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. "Why would you do that for strangers?" Jonathan watched one of the girls. He thought it was Daisy, curl her tiny fingers around her mother's hand, even in sleep. "Because no one should be alone in the rain," he said simply. Neither could have imagined how that moment of kindness would change everything. The first night in Jonathan's garage apartment felt surreal to Sophia. After weeks of cheap motels and nights in their car, the clean beds and well-stocked refrigerator seemed like a mirage that might vanish with the morning light. She tucked each of her daughters into bed, their matching faces peaceful in sleep. "We're safe tonight," she whispered, though she didn't quite believe it herself. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Jonathan stood in the doorway with a stack of towels and children's pajamas, still bearing price tags. "These might be too big," he said apologetically. "I asked my housekeeper to pick them up." "Thank you," Sophia replied, the words still uncomfortable on her tongue. "For everything." Jonathan lingered awkwardly. "I should mention, my son Tyler is 10. He doesn't know you're here yet. He's not great with change." "Neither are we," Sophia admitted. Later, as the girls slept deeply for the first time in months, Sophia sat at the small kitchen table. The weight of their situation pressed down on her shoulders. She'd fled with only what they could carry, leaving behind a life of material comfort and emotional devastation. Her hand trembled as she opened her worn notebook, flipping through sketches of interior designs, dreams from another lifetime when she'd been Sophia Coleman, rising star in Seattle's design world, before Maxwell Pierce had systematically dismantled her confidence along with her career. A car door slammed outside, startling her. Through the window, she saw a sleek black sedan in the driveway. A tall figure emerged, Maxwell's private investigator. He'd found them already. Fear seized her throat as she frantically gathered their few belongings. They needed to leave immediately. Jonathan's knock froze her mid-motion. "Everything okay?" he asked, noting her panic. "Someone's watching the house," she whispered. Jonathan's expression hardened as he glanced outside. "Marcus, my security chief." He hesitated. "Sophia, I need to ask you something. Your ex-husband, is he Maxwell Pierce of Pierce Innovations?" The blood drained from her face. "You know him." "We've had business dealings." Jonathan's voice was carefully controlled. "He stole proprietary technology from my company 7 years ago. Nearly bankrupted me with legal fees during the patent dispute." Sophia sank into a chair. Of all the people in Seattle who could have helped them, they'd landed on Maxwell's greatest business rival's doorstep. "You think I planned this?" she stated flatly. Did you? I didn't even know who you were until you introduced yourself at the grocery store, she said, meeting his gaze directly. Maxwell doesn't share his business enemies with his wife, just his anger about them. Jonathan studied her face. The technology he stole. It was a support system for children with learning disabilities. I developed it after Charlotte, my late wife, was diagnosed with cancer. She was a special education teacher. Sophia closed her eyes. That sounds like Maxwell. He has a talent for taking meaningful things and stripping them of their purpose. The silence between them hummed with shared understanding. What happens now? She finally asked. I understand if you want us to leave. Jonathan looked toward the bedroom where the 4 little girls slept, then back at Sophia. The irony wasn't lost on him, sheltering the family of the man who'd nearly destroyed him. You stay, he said simply. Whatever happened between Maxwell and me has nothing to do with your daughters. He'll come looking eventually. Let him try. As Jonathan left, Sophia returned to the window. The security chief remained in his car, a sentinel against the darkness. For the first time in months, she allowed herself a small measure of hope. In his own bedroom, Jonathan stared at Charlotte's photograph. What would you do? He whispered. The answer came clearly. Charlotte would have already been baking cookies for the girls' breakfast. Downstairs, Tyler sat coding on his tablet, unaware that his orderly world was about to change forever. The next morning arrived with uncomfortable introductions. Tyler, still in his pajamas, froze at the sight of 5 strangers in their kitchen. The quadruplets huddled behind their mother, 4 pairs of identical blue eyes watching him cautiously. Tyler, Jonathan said with forced cheerfulness, these are our guests. They'll be staying in the garage apartment for a while. Tyler's expression remained unreadable. You didn't tell me. It was a sudden decision, Jonathan explained, recognizing his son's displeasure at the disruption of their routine. Sophia stepped forward, professional smile in place. I'm Sophia. These are my daughters, Lily, Rose, Daisy, and Violet. Each girl gave a tiny curtsy as her name was called, a practiced movement that seemed oddly formal for 5-year-olds. We'll stay out of your way, Sophia assured Tyler. Jonathan watched his son retreat behind the emotional wall he'd perfected since Charlotte's death. Tyler, why don't you show the girls your game room? They might like your racing game. Tyler looked at his father as if he'd suggested giving away his inheritance. They're girls, and they're babies. We're 5, Lily, or possibly Rose, corrected. Softly. Not babies. The simple declaration from the normally silent child surprised everyone. 5 is practically grown up, Jonathan said, winking at the girls. I bet you could beat Tyler's level 3 score. A flash of competitive spirit crossed Tyler's face. No way, I hold the record. Mommy doesn't let us play games, Violet whispered. Daddy said they make us loud. An uncomfortable silence filled the kitchen. Jonathan and Sophia exchanged glances, a wordless acknowledgement passing between them about what that statement revealed. Well, Jonathan said brightly, my house has different rules. Being loud is allowed. That afternoon, the tentative sound of children's laughter echoed through the normally silent mansion. Jonathan paused his work call, drawn to the unfamiliar sound. In the game room, Tyler was demonstrating his racing game to the girls who watched with rapt attention. Your turn, he said to Daisy, reluctantly handing over the controller. Daisy held it like it might explode, but her face shone with determination as she navigated the virtual car through the course, tongue tucked between her teeth in concentration. You're not terrible, Tyler conceded when she finished, the highest praise an older boy could offer. In the kitchen, Sophia scrubbed already clean counters. I can earn my keep, she insisted when Jonathan found her. I was a designer before. Before everything. I'm good with my hands. You don't need to clean my house, Jonathan said gently. I need to contribute something. Her voice held a desperate edge. I've taken enough charity. Understanding dawned on Jonathan. My office needs redesigning, he said. The corporate decorator made it look like a funeral home. Maybe you could sketch some ideas? The grateful look in her eyes told him he'd found the right approach. That night, Jonathan watched from the doorway as Tyler, unprompted, helped the quadruplets build a blanket fort in the living room, something he hadn't done since Charlotte died. Perhaps the quiet mansion needed noise after all. The weekend brought clear skies, and Jonathan suggested they all visit the neighborhood park. Tyler initially resisted, but the prospect of showing the girls his favorite climbing structure eventually won him over. Stay where I can see you, Sophia reminded the quadruplets as they arrived, her eyes scanning the park for threats, a habit formed during months of looking over her shoulder. Jonathan noticed her tension. Marcus is parked across the street, he said quietly, just as a precaution. Sophia gave him a grateful look, though the constant vigilance was exhausting. The park buzzed with weekend activity, families playing, dogs chasing frisbees, teenagers lounging on blankets. Normal life that had seemed so far out of reach just days ago. Watch me, Tyler called to the girls, scaling the rope ladder with practiced ease. 4 identical faces gazed up in admiration. Can we try? Lily asked, looking to her mother for permission. Stay with Tyler. Sophia nodded, relaxing slightly as she settled on a bench. Jonathan sat beside her. They seem happy. This is the first time they've played freely in I can't remember how long, Sophia admitted. Maxwell had strict rules about public behavior. They had to be perfect, quiet, clean, well-mannered, 4 identical little dolls. They're children, not decorations, Jonathan said, watching as Tyler helped Violet navigate the monkey bars, his hands hovering protectively beneath her. To Maxwell, appearance was everything. Even before they were born, he planned their matching outfits, their synchronized development. Sophia's hands twisted in her lap. I stayed too long. I know that now. A shriek interrupted them, not of delight but distress. Tyler jogged toward them, Violet trailing behind in tears, clutching something broken. It was an accident, Tyler explained quickly. She slipped and landed on my gamepad. Violet's face crumpled with terror. She held out the broken device, her small body trembling. I'll be good, she whispered. Promise I'll be good. The rehearsed plea shattered something in Jonathan's chest. He knelt to her level. Violet, accidents happen. No one is angry. Confusion replaced fear in her eyes. But I broke it. Things can be replaced, Jonathan said gently. People can't be. Violet glanced at her mother, seeking confirmation that this wasn't a trick. Sophia nodded, blinking back tears. How about ice cream? Jonathan suggested. For everyone. Later, as the children devoured ice cream cones at a nearby stand, Sophia showed Jonathan sketches she'd drawn on napkins. Elegant room designs featuring built-in technology, innovative storage solutions, and playful touches. These are professional quality, Jonathan remarked, genuinely impressed. Just doodles, Sophia dismissed, though pride briefly flashed across her face. I used to dream of my own design studio, specializing in family-friendly spaces that didn't sacrifice sophistication. She tucked the napkins away. Another life. Why not this one? Jonathan asked. Before she could answer, Daisy appeared with sticky hands and a chocolate-smeared smile, the most childlike any of the girls had looked since their arrival. Thank you for today, Sophia said softly as they gathered the children. To leave. They needed this. What went unspoken was that perhaps they all did. The peaceful routine they had begun to establish shattered on Monday morning when Elaine, Jonathan's personal assistant, arrived at the mansion for their weekly strategy meeting. I see we have guests, she remarked, her professional smile not quite reaching her eyes as she spotted Sophia helping the quadruplets tie their shoes in the foyer. Temporary arrangement, Jonathan explained briefly. Sophia's family needed a place to stay. Elaine's arched eyebrow spoke volumes, though she said nothing further. As they walked to his home office, Jonathan caught her studying Sophia with calculated interest. The Henderson contract needs your signature, Elaine said, smoothly transitioning. to business. And the board is asking about the Pierce lawsuit settlement. Apparently, there are rumors that Maxwell Pierce is facing financial difficulties. Jonathan kept his expression neutral. Is that so? Nothing confirmed, Elaine continued. But interesting timing with your house guests. The implication hung in the air between them. The Henderson contract, Jonathan reminded her, changing the subject. Later that afternoon, as Sophia walked the girls to the neighborhood park, she noticed a sleek car parked across the street. The driver appeared absorbed in his phone, but the hairs on the back of her neck prickled with familiar warning. "Girls, we're going back," she said quietly, gathering them close. "But the swings," Rose protested softly. "Another day, sweetheart." Sophia's casual tone belied her racing heart as she herded them back toward Jonathan's property. Inside his downtown office tower, Maxwell Pierce examined photographs spread across his mahogany desk. Grainy images showed Sophia and the girls entering Jonathan Morgan's home, playing in his garden, riding in his car. "Interesting choice of sanctuary," Maxwell remarked to the private investigator standing before him. "She's either incredibly manipulative or incredibly lucky. Morgan doesn't seem aware of the connection," the investigator replied. Maxwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. How convenient for them both. He selected one photograph, the girls laughing as they chased bubbles across Morgan's manicured lawn, and traced his finger across their identical faces. "My daughters deserve better than a mother who abandons their father," he said softly. "Don't you agree?" The investigator knew better than to respond. That evening, Jonathan found Sophia in the garden, staring through the wrought iron fence at the street beyond. "Someone was watching us today," she said without preamble. Jonathan nodded. Marcus noticed. "He got a partial plate. He'll find us eventually," Sophia whispered. "Maxwell always gets what he wants." "Not this time," Jonathan assured her, his voice firm. "I'm having additional security cameras installed tomorrow." He hesitated. "Sophia, how much does Maxwell know about your connection to me?" "Nothing. He kept his business rivalries separate from home life." Her laugh held no humor. "In fact, I'm not even sure he saw me as a person, just another acquisition like his company's." Inside the house, Tyler was showing the quadruplets how to code a simple game on his tablet. Their delighted gasps when they made the character move. Across the screen echoed through the previously silent rooms. "Your son is good with them," Sophia observed. "He's different with them here," Jonathan admitted. "More like the boy he was before Charlotte died." As they watched the children through the window, Jonathan made a silent promise. Whatever storm Maxwell Pierce was brewing, they would weather it together. Seattle's autumn storms arrived with unexpected ferocity that evening. Wind howled through trees, bending branches until they scraped against windows like skeletal fingers. Lightning cracked across the sky, followed by thunder that rattled the foundations of Jonathan's mansion. Tyler sat with the quadruplets in the living room, building an elaborate fortress of cushions and blankets. "It's a storm shelter," he explained seriously, "in case the power goes out." As if summoned by his words, the lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the house into darkness. The girls gasped in unison. "Don't worry," Tyler's voice came through the darkness. "I've got emergency lights in my room." Jonathan fumbled for his phone, activating the flashlight. "I'll check the circuit breakers." In the garage apartment, Sophia stood frozen in the kitchen, knuckles white as she gripped the counter. Her breathing came in short, panicked bursts. As another crack of thunder shook the walls, the beam of Jonathan's flashlight found her there, trembling violently. "Sophia?" His voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you all right?" She couldn't answer. Her mind had transported her back to another storm, another power outage. Maxwell's rage at the interruption to his work, the sound of shattering glass, her daughters crying in the darkness while she stood helpless, paralyzed by fear. Jonathan approached slowly, recognition dawning on his face. "You're having a panic attack," he said gently. "Focus on my voice. You're safe here." He kept talking, his calm tone a lifeline pulling her back to the present. When her breathing finally steadied, embarrassment washed over her. I'm sorry, she whispered. The storms, they trigger memories. No apologies needed, Jonathan said, keeping a respectful distance. After Charlotte died, I couldn't walk past hospitals without having anxiety attacks. Tyler still can't handle the smell of certain medications. His admission of vulnerability created a bridge between them. Maxwell used power outages as an excuse, Sophia confessed, the words tumbling out in the safety of darkness. Said they made him lose control. The girls learned to be invisible during storms. Jonathan remained silent, allowing her to speak years of suppressed truth. He never hit them, she clarified quickly. But they saw things children shouldn't see, heard things. Her voice broke. When I finally decided to leave, he threatened to separate them, send each girl to a different relative if I fought for custody. Said no judge would believe me over him. He was wrong, Jonathan said simply. And I have excellent lawyers. The unexpected offer of alliance hung between them as another flash of lightning illuminated their faces, briefly revealing mutual understanding. We all carry scars, Jonathan said quietly. Charlotte taught me that healing happens when we stop hiding them. From the main house came the sound of childish laughter as Tyler led the quadruplets on a flashlight adventure through darkened hallways. Our children seem braver than we are, Sophia observed. They're resilient, Jonathan agreed. Tyler hasn't laughed like that since before Charlotte's diagnosis. They stood together in comfortable silence, listening to the storm outside and the children's voices within, two broken people finding unexpected strength in shared fragility. When morning dawned, something had shifted between them. Not romance, but something equally powerful. Trust. The morning after the storm brought unexpected visitors. A gentle knock at the front door revealed Dr. Rebecca Chen, the renowned pediatrician who lived 3 houses down, carrying a medical bag. Jonathan, she greeted warmly. Marcus mentioned one of the children might be ill. Jonathan looked puzzled. I don't think... A cry from upstairs interrupted him. Sophia rushed down the stairs, cradling Daisy against her chest. She's burning up, Sophia explained, panic edging her voice. It started an hour ago. Dr. Chen's professional demeanor took over. Let's have a look. In the guest bedroom, the doctor examined Daisy with gentle efficiency while her sisters watched. Anxiously from the doorway, 3 identical worried faces. Just a viral fever, Dr. Chen diagnosed, but we'll want to keep her hydrated. I'll write a prescription for something to manage the fever. As she packed her bag, Dr. Chen spoke casually. My husband and I host a neighborhood dinner every month. You should join us this Friday, all of you. The invitation, so normal in its simplicity, brought unexpected tears to Sophia's eyes. Later that day, Marcus arrived with additional security equipment. The former military officer installed cameras with methodical precision, explaining each component to an attentive Tyler. These motion sensors will alert my phone if anyone approaches the property, Marcus explained, his voice betraying no curiosity about why a wealthy tech CEO suddenly needed enhanced security. When he spotted the quadruplets watching from the window, Marcus gave them a rare smile. I've got 3 daughters myself, he told Jonathan quietly. They deserve to feel safe. The following week brought another addition to their growing circle when Mrs. Harper, the elementary school counselor, requested a meeting after the girls' first day. The quadruplets are remarkably bright, she told Jonathan and Sophia, but they exhibit signs of anxiety when separated, even into different reading groups. Instead of judgment, Mrs. Harper offered solutions. Art therapy has shown excellent results with children processing transition. I could recommend someone, whatever they need, Jonathan agreed without hesitation. Sophia looked at him with quiet gratitude, still unaccustomed to decisions made so easily, without calculation or cost weighed against worth. That evening, as Jonathan worked in his home office, Tyler appeared in the doorway. Dad, can we convert the guest house into an art studio for the girls? Mrs. Harper said they need a creative space. The boy's usual reticence had given way to purpose. I could help build tables. Jonathan studied his son, the The same boy who had once guarded his personal space with fierce determination, now willingly surrendering territory to four little girls who had become inexplicably important to him. "That's a great idea," Jonathan said, throat suddenly tight with emotion. "We'll start this weekend." Gradually, without formal acknowledgement, a protective circle formed around their unconventional household. Dr. Chen brought children's vitamins and invitations. Marcus extended his security perimeter without being asked. Mrs. Harper shared resources and gentle guidance. Jonathan's housekeeper, initially skeptical, now baked extra cookies whenever the girls visited the main house. For Sophia, who had systematically been isolated from friends and support by Maxwell, this spontaneous community felt like a miracle. Ordinary people extending ordinary kindness that was, in its way, extraordinary. For Jonathan, who had retreated into solitude, after Charlotte's death, these new connections pulled him reluctantly back into the world of the living. For the children, it simply felt like home. The storm that had been brewing finally broke with devastating precision. One moment they were celebrating the quadruplets' 6th birthday in the garden, balloons dancing in the breeze, a homemade cake with 4 identical candles waiting to be lit. And the next, chaos descended. It began with a phone call. Jonathan's face darkened as he listened, stepping away from the festivities. When he returned, his expression was carefully composed, but Sophia recognized the tension in his jaw. "What is it?" she asked quietly, while the children played a game with Tyler. "Maxwell has filed emergency custody petitions claiming parental alienation," Jonathan explained in a low voice. "And somehow the press got an anonymous tip about a wealthy tech CEO harboring the estranged wife and children of his business rival." Sophia's blood ran cold. "He's coming for us." "We knew he would eventually." Jonathan squeezed her hand reassuringly. "My legal team is already responding." What neither anticipated was how swiftly and comprehensively Maxwell would strike. By evening, vicious headlines questioned Jonathan's motives for housing his rival's family. Business publications hinted at industrial espionage. Social media buzzed with manipulated photos and out-of-context quotes. Morgan Technology's stock dropped 15% today, Elaine reported grimly during an emergency conference call. "The Henderson contract is wavering after rumors we used stolen Pierce technology." Jonathan maintained his composure. "Counter every allegation with facts. Our technology is original and patented." But the attack extended beyond business. As the birthday party wound down, the security alarm blared. Marcus's voice came through Jonathan's phone, tense but controlled. "Sir, we have a breach at the north perimeter." 3 masked figures had scaled the fence, vandalizing the property with spray-painted messages. "Child thief" and "home wrecker" defaced the pristine walls. Though Marcus's team apprehended one perpetrator, the damage was done. The children huddled in the safe room, a reinforced space Jonathan had installed after Charlotte's diagnosis made him paranoid about Tyler's safety. The quadruplets clung to each other while Tyler stood protectively nearby, his young face solemn, with newfound responsibility. "We need to leave," Sophia whispered later that night after the police had gone. "We're putting you and Tyler in danger." "That's exactly what Maxwell wants," Jonathan countered. "To isolate you again. He won't stop." Tears streamed down Sophia's face. "He'll destroy everything you've built." "Let him try." Jonathan's voice held unwavering determination. "My company survived his first attack. We'll survive this one." By morning, they had relocated to a secure apartment in a building owned by Jonathan's company, a temporary fortress while they regrouped. The children missed a week of school. Jonathan worked remotely, fighting battles on multiple fronts while maintaining a brave face for the sake of 5 children who watched the adults with worried eyes. In the quiet of night, when the children finally slept, Sophia sketched desperately designs for spaces that might never exist, dreams of a future increasingly uncertain. The sound of Jonathan's footsteps would bring her back to reality. "Any news?" she would ask. "We're holding our ground," he would answer, the weariness in his voice betraying the toll of their resistance. Yet despite Maxwell's calculated assault, something unexpected happened. They didn't break. Instead, this makeshift family bonded more tightly under pressure, finding strength in shared adversity that might have taken years to develop in peace. The safe apartment became their world for the next 3 weeks. Despite its luxurious furnishings, the space felt confining after the sprawling freedom of Jonathan's estate. The children adapted with remarkable resilience, Tyler converting the dining table into a makeshift coding station where he patiently taught the quadruplets basic programming games. Jonathan worked tirelessly from the second bedroom he'd transformed into an office command center. Multiple screens displayed market fluctuations, legal briefs, and security feeds from his main property. Dark circles formed under his eyes as he fought battles on every front. Morgan Technologies stock stabilizing, he reported one evening. A small victory in their ongoing war. Our counterfiling has temporarily blocked Maxwell's emergency custody petition. Sophia had claimed a corner of the living room, spreading her designs across the floor after the children were asleep. What had begun as a therapeutic outlet evolved into something more substantial. Detailed plans for homes specifically designed for blended families, with innovative features that promoted both togetherness and personal space. These are exceptional, Jonathan remarked, examining her work during a rare break from crisis management. Just keeping busy, Sophia dismissed, though her hands lovingly smoothed the edges of each drawing. No, Jonathan insisted. These could be the foundation of a legitimate design portfolio. A spark ignited in Sophia's eyes. Hope that had been methodically extinguished during her years with Maxwell now cautiously rekindled. I need to prove I can support my daughters, she said, quietly, in case. The unspoken fear hung between them. In case Maxwell won. That night, after reviewing another disappointing legal brief, Jonathan's resolve faltered. He sat alone in the darkened kitchen, doubt creeping in like a familiar enemy. Maxwell has connections. Everywhere, he confessed when Sophia found him there. Judges, business leaders, politicians, what if I can't protect you all? Without hesitation, Sophia placed her hand over his. You've already done more than anyone else would have. But this isn't just your fight anymore. She showed him the design, portfolio she'd been assembling, work that showcased her professional talents alongside a business plan for a studio, specializing in therapeutic living spaces. We're stronger together, she reminded him. You're fighting with corporate resources. I'm fighting with everything I have as their mother. Her quiet determination restored his own. They were no longer Jonathan and Sophia facing separate battles, but a united front. The children, too, formed their own alliance. Tyler had appointed himself protector of the quadruplets, teaching them a coded communication system for school. The girls, in turn, helped heal something in him that had been broken since his mother's death. Dad, Tyler said one evening, his voice more animated than Jonathan had heard in years. I think we should help Sophia start her design company. I could build her website. In that moment, looking at his son's earnest expression, Jonathan realized they had already won the most important victory. They had become a family, forged in adversity's fire. The courthouse loomed like a fortress, all stone and authority. Sophia gripped Jonathan's hand as they climbed the steps, her knuckles white with tension. Behind them, Marcus and 2 additional security personnel formed, a protective barrier against the photographers jostling for position. Remember, you've done nothing wrong, Jonathan reminded her softly. We have truth on our side. The truth, however, felt fragile in the face of Maxwell Pierce's practiced charisma. He waited in the mediation room, immaculately dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. His expression conveyed perfect concern, a master performance for the court-appointed mediator. Sophia, he greeted, his voice honeyed with false warmth. I've been so worried about our girls. Jonathan felt her tremble beside him, but her voice remained steady. They're not property, Maxwell. The mediator, a silver-haired woman with shrewd eyes, directed them to opposite sides of a polished table. This is a preliminary session to determine if we can reach an agreement without further litigation, she explained. Mr. Pierce has expressed concern about his daughter's sudden removal from their home. Their home was no longer safe, Sophia, stated firmly. Maxwell's mask slipped briefly, revealing a flash of cold fury before his concerned father facade returned. My wife has been under tremendous stress. I only want what's best for our family. For 3 excruciating hours, they circled each other with carefully chosen words. Maxwell presented himself as the wounded father, desperate to reunite with his beloved daughters. His attorney showcased professional accolades, charitable donations, and character witnesses attesting to his exemplary reputation. When it was Sophia's turn to speak, she faltered initially, years of conditioning making her doubt her own voice. Then she felt Jonathan's steady presence beside her and something shifted. I stayed silent for 6 years, she began. I believed Maxwell when he said no one would believe me over him. I believed him when he said he would separate our daughters if I tried to leave. Her voice grew stronger with each word. I am no longer that woman. The tide turned further during the supervised visitation with the girls. The quadruplets, once trained to perform perfect obedience in their father's presence, now approached him with cautious reservation. When Maxwell tried to charm them with expensive gifts and promises of ponies, they glanced uncertainly at their mother. We like our new school, Lily told him politely. And Tyler teaches us coding, added Rose. Mr. Jonathan doesn't yell when we spill things, Daisy said innocently. Each simple statement struck Maxwell like physical blows. His daughters had tasted freedom and found him wanting in comparison. When the girls chose to end the visit early, requesting to return to home with Jonathan and Tyler, Maxwell's carefully constructed facade cracked completely. In the courthouse hallway afterwards, he cornered Sophia while Jonathan spoke with their attorney. You can have custody, Maxwell hissed, voice low and dangerous. On one condition. You leave Seattle immediately and cut all ties with Morgan. Otherwise, I will destroy him, his company, and his reputation. Sophia met his gaze without flinching. Is that what this is about? Your rivalry with Jonathan? This is about what's mine, Maxwell snarled. You have 24 hours to decide. The ultimatum hung over Sophia like a storm cloud. Leave Jonathan and secure custody of her daughters, or stay and risk losing everything. When she finally shared Maxwell's threat with Jonathan that evening, his reaction surprised her. It's your decision, he said quietly. Whatever you choose, I'll support you. Sophia studied his face, the man who had become her unlikely champion over these past months. You would let us go? After everything you've done? I would hate it, Jonathan admitted. But I'd understand. The girls come first. Before she could respond, his phone rang. It was Elaine, her normally composed voice tinged with excitement. You need to come to the office. Now. Bring Sophia. At Morgan Technologies, they found an unexpected visitor waiting in the conference room. Vanessa Ellis, Maxwell's former executive assistant, clutching a USB drive like a lifeline. I worked for Mr. Pierce for 7 years, she explained, her hands trembling slightly. I've witnessed things. When I saw the news about the custody battle, I couldn't stay silent anymore. The drive contained a digital treasure trove, audio recordings of Maxwell's rages, financial records showing systematic efforts to undermine Sophia's independence, and emails discussing plans to use the children as leverage. He kept everything, Vanessa explained. He never thought anyone would dare use it against him. As the evidence mounted, so did community support. Employees from Morgan Technologies came forward with testimonies about Maxwell's unethical business practices. Dr. Chen provided medical records documenting the girls' anxiety symptoms. Neighbors who had witnessed the transformation in the quadruplets wrote character statements about Sophia's parenting. The school principal, Mrs. Harper, and even Tyler prepared statements about the positive changes they'd observed in the girls since leaving Maxwell's control. It's like watching flowers bloom after a long winter, Mrs. Harper wrote eloquently. These children are finally growing into their individual personalities. The most damning evidence came from Maxwell's own business records. The private investigator he'd hired had documented everything, including Maxwell's illegal attempts to sabotage Morgan Technologies and the orchestrated vandalism of Jonathan's home. When presented with the mounting evidence, Maxwell's attorneys suggested a settlement. The court would grant Sophia full custody, with Maxwell receiving limited supervised visitation rights. His company would face a separate investigation for business ethics violations. In the quiet aftermath of victory, Jonathan faced his own crossroads. This family that had stumbled into his life had become precious to him in ways he hadn't thought possible after Charlotte's death. Yet he wondered if they needed space to heal without his involvement. "What happens now?" he asked Sophia, as they watched the children playing in the garden of his home, their home again. Sophia's smile held both gratitude and something deeper. "We rebuild, all of us, together." With Maxwell's threats neutralized by legal agreements and pending investigations, a new sense of permanence settled over their once temporary arrangement. Jonathan's sprawling property, once a monument to his solitary success, now buzzed with the activity of 7 people finding their places within its walls. One sunny Saturday morning, Jonathan called everyone to the breakfast table for an announcement. Tyler sat beside him, practically vibrating with excitement as they unrolled architectural blueprints across the table. "We've been working on this for weeks," Jonathan explained, as the quadruplets craned their necks to see. Plans to renovate the east wing of the property. The detailed drawings showed a professional design studio connected to a learning center with individual spaces, tailored to each child's interests. "This area would be your design headquarters," Jonathan explained to Sophia, indicating a light-filled studio with dedicated client meeting spaces. "And these smaller rooms would be customized for each child, a music corner for Lily, a reading nook for Rose, a sports area for Daisy, and an art studio for Violet. And my coding lab connects everything," Tyler added proudly. "I helped design the smart home features." Sophia's fingers traced the plans with trembling wonder. "This is permanent, if you want it to be," Jonathan said softly. The renovation became a community project. Dr. Chen's husband, an electrical engineer, helped wire the smart home systems. Marcus supervised security integration. Mrs. Harper consulted on the learning spaces. Even some of Jonathan's employees volunteered weekends to help with construction, working alongside professional contractors. For the quadruplets, the most significant moment came when Jonathan presented them with color palettes for their individual spaces. "Different colors?" Lily asked, her voice small with disbelief. "Different everything," Jonathan assured her. "You can each choose what feels right for you." The girls exchanged identical looks of astonishment before cautiously selecting their preferences. Lily chose serene blues. Rose gravitated toward warm yellows. Daisy selected energetic greens. And Violet, true to her name, embraced varying shades of purple. These simple choices, their first real exercise in individual expression, marked a profound turning point in their development. For Sophia, watching her studio take shape brick by brick dismantled the final walls of disbelief. When the sign for Four Blooms Design was installed above the entrance, she stood speechless, tears streaming down her face. "I never thought I'd have this again," she admitted to Jonathan. "Not just the work, but the freedom to create." "You did this," Jonathan reminded her. "Your talent, your resilience. I just provided the space." As construction neared completion, they worked side by side, planting a garden that would connect all the new spaces. Jonathan digging holes while Sophia directed placement. The children racing around with watering cans and packets of seeds. In the warm afternoon light, covered in dirt and laughing, they looked like what they had become, a family pieced together from broken parts, stronger at the mended places. A year after Sophia and her daughters had first arrived on that rainy night, Jonathan organized a special ceremony. The morning dawned crisp and clear, perfect for the occasion he had planned as a surprise for their newly blended family. As breakfast concluded, Jonathan looked around the table at the faces that had become his world. "Everyone, I have something to show you outside." Tyler, now 11 and growing taller by the day, led the quadruplets with the comfortable familiarity of an older brother. The girls, once indistinguishable in their identical clothing and careful mannerisms, now moved with individual confidence. Lily carried her violin case everywhere. Rose rarely appeared without a book tucked under her arm. Daisy wore athletic clothes at every opportunity, and Violet's fingers were perpetually stained with paint. Sophia walked beside Jonathan, her hand naturally finding his as they followed the children into the garden. The transformation in her over the past year was remarkable. Her design business was flourishing, specializing in adaptive spaces for children with special needs. The haunted look that had once shadowed her eyes had been replaced by quiet confidence. Near Sur, the newly landscaped area behind the remodeled East Wing, a landscaping crew stood waiting. Beside them were 5 young cherry trees and 1 larger, more mature specimen, their root balls carefully wrapped. "What's all this?" Sophia asked, genuine surprise in her voice. Jonathan's eyes held hers with tender significance. "These are Yoshino cherry trees. They're known for their resilience and beauty." He gestured to the 5 smaller saplings, 1 for each child, to grow alongside them. The children gathered around, examining their trees with curiosity. "And the big one?" Tyler asked, pointing to the mature tree. "That one," Jonathan said, his voice softening, "represents our family, all of us together." The landscapers helped each child plant their tree, explaining how to pat the soil gently around the roots. Sophia watched with glistening eyes as her daughters, once so timid and frightened, confidently dug their hands into the earth, laughing when they got dirt on their clothes instead of panicking about punishment. When all 6 trees were planted, in a graceful circle, Jonathan brought out a small wooden chest with a hinged lid. "In Japan, there's a tradition of burying treasures beneath family trees," he explained, though he was improvising this ritual for their unique circumstances. "Each of us will place something special inside, something that represents what this family means to us." Jonathan went first, placing inside the box the first design sketch Sophia had ever drawn for him, a simple napkin rendering of what would become her studio. Sophia added a handcrafted bracelet, Tyler's first awkward attempt at jewelry making that he'd gifted her on her birthday. Tyler contributed a thumb drive. "It has the first game the girls and I programmed together," he explained. Each of the quadruplets added their own token. Lily placed a pressed flower from their first visit to the park. Rose contributed a page from her favorite storybook. Daisy added a small soccer medallion, and Violet included a watercolor miniature she'd painted of all of them together. The final item Jonathan placed in the box caught everyone by surprise, a simple gold band. "This isn't a proposal," he clarified quickly, seeing Sophia's startled expression. "Not yet. It's a promise that whatever happens, whatever the future holds, we're connected now, a family by choice, not just circumstance." As they buried the chest beneath the central tree, Jonathan looked at the faces surrounding him. Tyler stood tall and protective beside the quadruplets, no longer the isolated, grieving boy he'd been. The girls, once identical copies molded by fear, now bloomed with distinct personalities. And Sophia, strong, resilient Sophia, watched it all with peaceful contentment that had once seemed impossible. "Let's make a promise," Jonathan suggested. "Every year we'll gather here to see how our trees have grown, and to remember how far we've come." "And add new treasures?" Rose asked, always thinking of stories and their continuations. "Absolutely," Jonathan agreed. "Our story is just beginning." As the children raced off to play, Sophia remained beside Jonathan, both watching the newly planted trees sway gently in the breeze. "You know," she said softly, "a year ago I couldn't imagine a future. Now I can't imagine one without all of this. Without you." Jonathan's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining like roots seeking strength and connection. No words were needed in that moment, just the silent understanding of 2 people who had found each other in the midst of their broken pieces and created something whole. Above them, the spring sun filtered through newly budding branches, casting dappled light patterns that seemed to dance with promise across the garden they had built together. As seasons changed and another spring arrived, the cherry trees they had planted blossomed in elegant synchronicity. The smaller trees, each representing a child, had grown remarkably, while the central family tree spread its branches protectively over them all. Just as Jonathan had promised, they gathered beneath the trees to commemorate 1 year since their special ceremony. So much had changed in those 12 months. Sophia's design business, Four Blooms Design, had transformed from a fledgling startup into a respected firm specializing in adaptive spaces for children with special needs. Her innovative approach, incorporating technology from Morgan Technologies, created environments that helped children thrive despite physical or developmental challenges. Jonathan had shifted his company's focus as well, developing a line of educational technology inspired by watching Tyler teach the quadruplets. Their collaboration had breathed new purpose into Morgan Technologies, connecting Jonathan's business success with something more meaningful than profit margins. The girls, now 7, had blossomed as distinctly as the flowers they were named for. Lily had discovered a remarkable talent for music, her small fingers dancing across violin strings with natural grace that brought tears to listeners' eyes. Rose had advanced 2 grade levels in reading, devouring books with insatiable curiosity, and starting to write her own stories. Daisy had joined a youth soccer league, her boundless energy finding perfect expression on the field. Violet's artwork now adorned walls throughout their home, her unique perspective capturing emotions that belied her young age. Tyler, at 12, had grown taller than Sophia, his awkward pre-teen frame hinting at the young man he would become. No longer the withdrawn, grieving child of before, he had found his voice as the protective older brother the quadruplets adored. His coding projects now included adaptive technology for children with disabilities, inspired by his mother's work and his new sister's boundless imagination. As the family gathered beneath the trees surrounded by close friends who had become extended family, Dr. Chen and her husband, Marcus and his daughters, Mrs. Harper and Elaine, Jonathan cleared his throat nervously. "Last year we buried treasures beneath this tree," he began, his eyes finding Sophia's, including a ring that represented a promise, not yet a proposal, but a possibility. Quiet anticipation settled over the gathering as Jonathan took Sophia's hand. "Today it is a proposal," he said simply. From his pocket he withdrew a small velvet box containing a ring with 5 small gemstones surrounding a larger central diamond. 5 stones, 1 for each of our children, surrounding us. Sophia's eyes filled with tears as their audience held collective breath. They had built something precious together. Not just a relationship, but a true family, forged through adversity and strengthened by choice. "We didn't choose how our paths crossed," Jonathan continued, "but we choose now to walk together, not because we need each other for safety or security anymore, but because life is infinitely better when we share it." "Yes," Sophia whispered, her voice steady and sure. "Our answer is yes." Cheers erupted around them as the children rushed forward, enveloping them in a group embrace. Tyler, usually careful about displaying emotion, hugged his father fiercely. The quadruplets danced around them, their individual personalities shining through their shared joy. Lily twirling elegantly, Rose reciting impromptu poetry, Daisy leaping athletically, and Violet already planning the wedding decorations. Later, as friends departed and evening settled over their home, the family gathered in what had once been Jonathan's lonely living room. The space, like everything else, had transformed. Children's artwork hanging alongside elegant design sketches, toys mingling with technology prototypes, evidence of 7 interconnected lives filling every corner. In the soft lamplight, Jonathan watched Tyler help the girls build yet another blanket fort, a tradition that had survived from their earliest days together. Their laughter echoed through rooms once haunted by silence and grief. Sophia joined him, fitting naturally against his side. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked quietly. "When you stopped to help us that rainy night?" Jonathan thought of Charlotte, whose memory remained honored in their home. He believed she would have approved of the family they had created, different from what he had lost but beautiful in its own right. "No," he admitted. "But that's the best part of second chances. They take you places you never thought you'd go." Outside, the cherry tree stood steadfast in the garden, 5 smaller trees surrounding one larger one, growing stronger together than any could have grown alone. Like the family they represented, they had weathered storms and survived seasons of dormancy to bloom more beautifully than before. Their story had not begun as a fairy tale, but as separate journeys of loss and survival. Yet their endings, or rather their new beginnings, had intertwined to create something even more meaningful. A family, chosen, built, and treasured by all who were part of it. 5 roses, once wilting in darkness, now flourished in the light of belonging. And the man who once had everything but nothing that truly mattered, had found wealth beyond measure in the simple miracle of love given and received.